Hey guys, Action Jackson here. I wanted to make a quick addendum video to the Deck Building 101 video that I made yesterday. As a few people noticed, and I foolishly didn't because it was midnight when I recorded the video, Artifact Fire was actually counting the 5 hero cards as part of the main board lists of both of the decks that I made. So in the case of the blue-black control list, I was 5 cards short, and in the case of the red-black list, because I also forgot to put in Assault Ladder's Sorlacon's Premier Spell, I was 2 cards short. So I've gone ahead and put up a complete list for each of the decks that I mentioned yesterday on the screen, so you can see what I was thinking. The changes are fairly minor. You just get more techie slots. To be honest, this is where the real deck diverges a little bit more, because a lot of, like, for example with blue-black control, there's kind of an additional win condition package that I run in the closed beta that I don't have access to here. So I've kind of just tried to add more effects that help you get to the late game. So things like I've added some hip fire. I put one more Satyr Magician in here as kind of like a lightning rod for enemy effects. Friendly Fire is an interesting card. I actually think a lot of people underrate this card. It's not fantastic because of how meta-dependent it is. If you're against a lot of control decks, it's very rare that you're going to get particularly good value from this. Consider this to be a placeholder for some control-y effect, and you'll kind of see the purpose of it. If you're looking at the red-black list, the changes that I made, considering I only had a couple of additional cards to add, more obviously Assault Ladders, because that wasn't in there before, but I think I added a Gloaty Vandal. I cannot remember if I put that in before. It's actually a pretty important card, so I'm glad that I was able to put it in. I cut 1 bitter enemies to get the full 3. You only really need 1 bitter enemies. Again, it's kind of a fail-safe win condition in case you are too slow and this comes out and you're kind of just trying to survive for a while this ticks up to the point where it can kill an already weak tower. So anyway, these are the 2 lists. Thank you to Artifact Fire, by the way. They reached out on Reddit and on YouTube, I believe, and mentioned that they wanted to know what I suggested for how to improve this, and now you can actually drag these around. So for the initial heroes, for example, I can do something like this, which is actually, you know, the order that I would like them in, and over here you can see the order is the way that I would like them to. So nice responsiveness from those guys. Thank you for making an awesome tool for me to use in my videos. But yeah, I just wanted to do a quick addendum, make sure that the lists were more accurate. And you know what? Seeing as I'm doing another video anyway, I might as well throw in another list. Okay, so what list are we going to make today? Well, I was thinking that it might be interesting to make blue-red tempo. This is actually another list that you can get pretty close to with the cards that have been revealed, and it's a really interesting deck. I think that I've seen 2 very strong builds of this list that both approach it totally differently. This is the only list that I've ever seen a version running a basic hero in. Like, I've never seen another list use Keef, Jamoy, Debbie/Riley, or Farraven. But this one you can actually use Jamoy, and it's not bad. Because in the tempo list you tend to run out of cards kind of quickly, so the hero ability is strong. Additionally, though, Battlefield Control is very, very good. I think people underestimate how good this card is. If you think about New Orders, right, it only affects your allies. If you think about Ventriloquy, it taunts, which means you kind of have to overkill a unit or, you know, draw all of the fire onto one of your units, which can mean that if it's a hero that is the only thing you have access to for pulling stuff away, it's going to take a lot more damage than you'd like. Honestly, Battlefield Control is kind of the best version of this sort of effect. Like, Pick a Fight is also not good in this kind of list. So, yeah, this card is not good in the sense that it's, you know, if you were rating it based on scale of niche to auto-include, it's definitely very niche. But it does work in a couple of lists. So I'm going to go ahead and make that version for this video, just because I think it's cool. However, before we get to that, let's apply the process and trust the process and try and figure out what the core cards that one wants to run in a tempo deck are. Tempo is an interesting archetype. You are essentially trying to gain like very good value out of your cards early, get a lot of gold through killing heroes, get a lot of momentum in the game, and then later on have access to big effects. In this case, it's going to be Time of Triumph that's kind of our win condition. Probably only 2 is reasonable because of the cost, though. Also, super critical in tempo decks is Spring the Trap. This is how you avoid losing a lane too badly later into the game, but it's also how you maybe take a lane that you're losing that has a red hero in it, and you are able to apply that as advantage elsewhere. Tempo and Artifact, generally speaking, comes in its rawest form through the use of cross-lane cards. And the reason for that is you're essentially playing more than your maximum mana in a lane on a given turn. So obviously you're gaining a lot of tempo in that lane. As such, Spring the Trap is a fantastic card in this list. Now, in terms of other stuff that you really want, Fight Through the Pain is a guaranteed include. You're going to be running 3 red heroes in most blue-red tempo lists, because you're trying, like if you're more control, maybe like 2 red is okay. But if you're more tempo, you need the bodies to be able to take advantage of that tempo. So red is kind of the more critical element of the combination. And as such, as a general rule, you want your initiative cards to be in the color that you have most prevalently in your deck. Because that way, if you have like one of each red hero in each lane, assuming that you're losing a lane, you can still do something very impactful in that lane just by using Fight Through the Pain to gain initiative for a lane you're actually winning and you want to snowball. I think enough magic is a reasonable 1 or 2 of. You know, it really helps you push your advantage. Creeps-wise, there's definitely some creeps that are pretty important for your tempo decks. Most importantly, I've seen more recent versions of this deck running Red Mist Pillagers as like a 2 of, and I think that's pretty good. Chances are, one of your winning lanes will be winning enough that you can play this at some point and threaten both an Ancient Kill and a response, which is something you want to do, for sure. Bronze Legionnaire is also an important card in the list. If you're talking about improvements, Messenger Rookery, I think, is a critical 3 of. You're trying to get your red bodies to hit their weak bodies, and this enables you to do that very reliably. Outside of this, Conflag is good. It's definitely a reasonable include, but let's wait and see. I think we've touched on all of the critical cards for now. So in terms of heroes, red-blue control tempo. Definitely want Axe. I think Beastmaster and Bristleback are actually fairly equivalent slots. They skew the game towards different places, and depending on the meta, one will be better than the other. We're going to use Jamoy in this list, and I'd say Luna. And then for our final hero, we want Legion Commander. And so for this list, as it currently stands, you can see like we don't have a lot of low-cost cards, so something like this isn't too bad. And this is kind of what I was talking about, like even with battlefield control, because you can only cast it in the blue heroes lane, like Jamoy or Luna aren't going to get value out of battlefield control. So even though you have a 1-mana blue spell, there's not really a good reason to put a blue hero in your starting heroes, at least when it comes to the list that you're presented with here. Again, there is a blue spell that I think is important at 3 mana that has not been revealed, and as such, probably the correct answer is to do something more like this. Alright, now that we've got that, let's think about filling out our deck. We've got 7 slots left. I think there's an interesting argument to be made for including Annihilation maybe as a 2 of. I personally quite like this, but depending on how hard you're going on winning early, that is or isn't a good call. Seeing as we've got Beastmaster here, this is definitely a slower version, and the win condition is more heavily weighted towards Time of Triumph. As a result, I think Annihilation is a good card. And I also think by the same token that Conflagration is pretty good. In fact, I'd run 3. This is even better if you're running Bristleback, because then you can reduce their armor and increase the amount of damage that your Conflags are doing by default. In terms of additional creeps that maybe we could add, let's see. Maybe 1 more Red Mist Pillager is fine in this version of the list. I think we mostly want spells, though. Cunning Plan is pretty good. I've seen some versions running that. So maybe actually we'll run 2 or 3 of those. Perhaps cutting 1 Conflag. Okay, and then item-wise for this deck, you really want things that take advantage of your tempo and let you really control the entire game. So Blink Dagger is fantastic in this deck. It really lets you get your heroes into the positions they need to be, and it also lets you preemptively, like once you've gained a lot of value early and you're very ahead on tempo, it becomes a lot more reasonable to say, okay, I'm heading on to turn 4, there's about to be Annihilation online, and I've got 2 or 3 heroes in this lane. It's time for me to Blink Dagger one of them to the lane that I'm, like, not even trying to fight or I'm losing, just so that I can avoid losing everything. And because you're a tempo deck, even if you move that hero into a lane that you're losing, you can probably still find a way to claw back. So that's a pretty awesome include, I think. This is another deck that does pretty good with Stonehall items, more so than the aggressive deck. And if you notice earlier, I actually changed some of the items to better represent what I was running in the beta, in the aggro deck. There's another item here that I'd like to replace the Ob Orbs, but I cannot include. And maybe like an Assassin's Veil, something like that. We don't want too many health items, because you can only have 5 equipped, so if you have 5 in your inventory, all you're doing is that, where sometimes maybe you want some armor, so I like doing 1 Stonehall Cloak in a lot of my lists for that reason. So, here's another list for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. I haven't spent as much time talking about it as I did with the other lists, but, you know, once you understand some of the formula that helps with deck construction and understand the core cards and why they're good in a specific archetype, it becomes pretty fast to make something playable. I guess I can spend a little bit of time going over some of those core cards that we talked about. So, Time of Triumph, as I mentioned, this is your win con. Spring the Trap can serve as kind of a soft win con slash get back in the game mechanics slash really capitalize on your tempo. Fight Through the Pain, critical. You got 3 red heroes, but sometimes you really need initiative to kill their guys with a duel or Berserker's Call before you get annihilationed. Bronze Legionnaire and Red Mist Pillager just help you fight along a different axes, doesn't put all your eggs in one basket, and Red Mist Pillager can be a win condition in and of itself. Messenger Rookery is key, because a lot of what you're going to be doing is directing Axe LC and a buffed up Beastmaster or Bristleback into enemy heroes, and as such it's pretty strong. In the Beastmaster version, this actually could maybe be a 2 of, for what that's worth, because you're playing for a later game. Maybe even do this. There's a lot of little tweaking that you can do. There's only, I think, like 1 card that is just not revealed yet that would go in this, and it would go in place of enough magic. So yeah, this is a pretty cool deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this stuff. I have some more videos that I want to start working on soon, but I'm, you know, during the week pretty busy and typically unable to record. I also have something going on this weekend, so probably the week after this week is when I'm going to start making more content in earnest. Additionally, I'm going to be on a podcast on, I think, around Wednesday, called the Secret Shop Podcast, talking a little bit about the beta leaks. If you want to check that out, I'll put a link in the description for the location of that podcast. All right, I'll catch you guys next time.